have a Titan TV matchup right in the beginning of the year with the brand new LG G5 versus the brand new S95F. Up next.
I've seen things people wouldn't believe.
Hey, what's up guys? I'm Brian. This is Tech Therapy. Thank you so much for joining me for this comparison. This is the matchup that we've all been waiting for, and I'm so glad to be able to bring it to you very early in the year. We have the brand new LG G5 with the new RGB primary 4-stack layer OLED versus the brand new Quantum Dot OLED S95F. Now, these TVs are absolutely amazing, and you win regardless of which one you choose. But being able to compare them is awesome. We did this at our good friends at Value Electronics. We had them compared the entire day. There are times where the differences are pretty massive. There are times they look exactly the same. It all depends really on the presets. But seeing how far the G5 has come is pretty amazing, and seeing the strides that the S95F has made is also incredible. Without further ado, let's check out the LG G5 versus the S95F. Thank you so much for watching. All right, guys, let's do it. LG G5 versus the Samsung S95F. We're here at Value Electronics. I want to show you some bright room performance from both displays before we go into a dark room. Showing the reflection handling of both, the LG G5 is glossy. Samsung S95F has the new anti-glare treatment, which does very well with ambient light such as lamps, and even does well in this room. What you'll get from the G5 is more reflections, which aren't bad right now, but can get difficult if the sun hits it directly. And the S95F, you'll see in some of these scenes where the anti-glare can have a more lifted black appearance. Otherwise, both are doing great in this particular room right now. The sun isn't hitting either one directly. They're both right now in their standard preset. Right out of the box, both TVs, though, have been broken in, meaning they have a sufficient amount of calibration watch time, but the presets are what they would be out of the box, obviously with all eco settings disabled. Now, I'll start off by saying that both TVs are absolutely magnificent. You really don't need to even be outside of the filmmaker preset, which I can't believe I'm saying. I've never been a big fan in years past of filmmaker mode, especially on OLEDs, but they look absolutely ridiculous. And this is where they do look the most similar. So we'll spend most of the video in the filmmaker preset as well as the cinema and movie presets. Meaning both TVs are unbelievably vibrant and bright, even in their most accurate preset. There's no reason to put them in standard or dynamic or vivid to push them even to be on camera to show the differences between the two. We're also filming two different technologies, the Quantum Dot OLED, which is the Samsung S95F, and the new a WOLED LG G5, which now has a RGB Tandem 4-stack layered OLED. So they will look different in certain shots, which is why you won't see many shots in white, as they will appear more magenta on the S95F. Special shout out to the one and only Jennifer Gala and her second channel, HDR Super Channel. The majority of the content seen within this video, including this one right now, which is her newest, and in my intro, are courtesy of both Jen's main channel and her second channel, HDR Super Channel. Check the description below for links to both channels, and consider becoming a patron to her main channel and download these same amazing demos in both Dolby Atmos and Dolby Vision. Thank you, Jen. Now, we're also shooting a 77-inch LG G5 versus the Samsung S95F at 65 inches. Now, the reasoning for that is the only G5s that are available at the moment, and Value Electronics has them early, is the 77 and the 83. And the only sizes available for the S95F are the 65-inch at this moment. So it's the only reason why we have these different sizes matching up against one another. Now, I'll also rematch these two monsters in a few weeks when the 83-inch S95F arrives. However, it's not a quantum dot OLED, it's a tandem OLED just like the G5, which I think will be fascinating. We'll see how Samsung handles this new amazing technology from LG Display, and we'll also see if the anti-glare has any negative effects or positive effects going against an LG G5 of the same size. But as of right now, we have 77 inches versus 65. I'll have my own G5, which I purchased at Value Electronics, at 83 inches in a week or so. Now let's check out the different presets on both. We have the S95F and the G5. We'll try to do this at the same time. Both are currently in their Filmmaker preset. We're going to start it back over, and we're going to go into Dynamic and Vivid. So on the S95F, we're now in Dynamic, Vivid on the G5. Then we're going to move into Standard, which both TVs ship in. And the standard presets don't really match each other very well. Then moving into Eco, then Power Save for the G5, Cinema Home on the G5, Movie on the S95F, then Cinema on the G5. We'll stay in Movie for a moment, then Filmmaker mode, and then Filmmaker mode. Now, as I mentioned, the standard presets don't match up well. Standard actually matches up better with Cinema Home, which isn't going to matter much for this comparison. We spend most of the time in Filmmaker because they are both so punchy and bright. And they are so bright that you would see them clipping on the content that we are using from Jen. So anytime that the S95F is in standard, I would have Cinema Home on the G5, but I would have warmed up the S95F to match up in terms of color, because it's typically a very cool preset. So we'll be leaving them in Cinema Home and Standard, but they both look absolutely amazing. I mean, ridiculous detail. As I've mentioned before, I actually purchased an 83-inch LG G5 from our friends at Value Electronics. However, when I see a QD-OLED of any kind, whether it's a first gen or a fourth gen, I'm instantly blown away and jealous. If there was an 83-inch QD-OLED, as I saw at CES, or I thought it was a QD-OLED, I was ready to buy it sight unseen. So I love the technology. I love what LG is doing in LG displays with the new Tandem OLED, and I can't believe they've caught up and in some ways surpassed in terms of their peak brightness and vibrancy. But it's really hard to tell with the S95F if it wasn't for the anti-glare, which does an amazing job at its true purpose, but I do believe it does hurt the contrast ratio and the peak brightness just a little bit to have the G5 pull ahead visually. Not measurement-wise, but visually in terms of that little bit of HDR impact and brightness. Now, don't get it twisted, they're both incredible and they both have amazing HDR brightness, but I do feel if the S95F was glossy and a fourth gen panel, it would look unreal and probably pass the G5. However, these TVs are what they are. In that case, I would give the HDR impact to the G5. What LG has improved upon so much from the G4 is retaining color at their highest peak brightness, meaning when we're pushing these TVs with Gen's content to 4,000 nits, on the G4 generations of MLA, you would lose color saturation. That said, the QD-OLED S95F will always have a bit more color. Now we're all here in the filmmaker mode, pushing this into dynamic and seeing how bright these TVs get. The G5 is clipping. There is more color there than there is on camera. I'm more or less highlighting how much brighter it can look. But even in these shots, there is more color on the S95F in person. As I mentioned, we are in both the dynamic and vivid preset just to see how hard we can push these TVs and if there's any real detail left to look at, which is why I like this shot here of the leaves. Both still look pretty realistic for being in this very bright and typically very noisy preset. The processing on both is excellent. Now, though we're clipping a bit on the TVs, I want you to see the color, the richness, and how far the G5 has actually come with this new technology. Now, on the fly, we'll go through the presets while we're paused here, starting at dynamic and vivid, and we'll move through the presets to show how they both have amazing flexibility of image. They can go from being very saturated and very vibrant and colorful down to looking ultra realistic. But I love the fact that both of them, in terms of their filmmaker modes, look amazing, and I would actually keep them in filmmaker mode the majority of the time. Now, special shout out to the community. You guys watch these videos with me. We premiere every single one of my videos live so we can chat as a community. Love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Tell me in the comments right now, what are you guys seeing between these two titans? Tomorrow, I'll be filming the Sony Bravia 8 Mark II QD-OLED, and I'll be comparing that to the S95F. Each manufacturer handles their presets differently. I love the filmmaker mode on both of these TVs as well as the professional preset on Sony. When you get outside of those presets, you can see how different the displays look from one another. That's signature of what each manufacturer and their engineering team is trying to say. However, as I mentioned earlier, the filmmaker mode is so good on these TVs, and they're both so bright and vibrant. They seem so alive even in that accurate preset. There was no reason to move them out of that preset for any real time at all, other than some of the highlighted things that I've mentioned. A lot of the time we're staying in those presets. Now, in these liquid shots here, we'll be in standard right here, in standard in Cinema Home. There's more saturation on the standard preset, but in the Cinema Home preset, it was brighter and more saturated than the movie preset. So trying to match them up is a little difficult when they're so different in terms of their signatures. As Samsung has a color booster option on in some of their presets, LG doesn't have that feature. But when you're going presets out of the box, you have to leave them that way. The only thing I ever change when the TVs are competing against one another is warming up those presets because they'll appear more cool on camera. Now, I didn't have any issues with lifted blacks or problems coming out of blacks with either the G5 or the S95F. You can see in that last shot with the stars that everything is crystal clear, even coming out of black. But these shots here looked very different when I compared the G4 to the S95D last year. Arguably, the G5 looks more saturated and looks more colorful, but you can pick and choose whichever one you like. But it's amazing to see that LG has made that adjustment. I always feel like LG is more reactive versus proactive. They kind of keep their best stuff back until they need to bring it out. The colors can be deeper here on the G5. Now, in some of these highlighted parts where you're going to see more of a magenta tint on the S95F, that is present on QD-OLEDs, especially with the anti-glare, but it's not nearly as evident as you're seeing here. Again, capturing both is difficult. Now, you're not going to get exactly what I'm seeing in person on any camera. However, they are pretty close to what I'm seeing. Now, as I mentioned earlier, it's incredible to see the differences between the G4 and the G5. I did a previous video on that. Now, many of you thought that the G5 looked desaturated, as I spent a lot of time highlighting the brightness differences. If I set the camera to make the G5 look just like the G4, they look just like each other. There are times here, again, where the S95F does have more color and more saturation. Again, we're out of the filmmaker preset. And in person, what we did feel like we saw on the QD-OLEDs in that last shot was a bit more rain in detail in the rain. So there are times where the G5 is just simply brighter, but sometimes that's going to be to its detriment. But I think we can all agree that they go shot for shot with each other, and these to me are the most telling shots from Jennifer. Is high HDR impact, they're very, very bright, however they do still handle the gradients of the sun in the background. They both look exquisite in these shots. They both keep the same amount of color. And in one of these shots coming up, not this one, but the next one, a lot of the detail was actually missing on the G4. It's great to see the detail on the G5 and also confirming that it was also on the QD-OLEDs. Special shout out to Value Electronics, Robert, Wendy, and Leanne for allowing me to spend the entire night filming these. I was there all day, not to mention we were there for the entire weekend shooting all 4 TVs. Please consider making your next AV purchase through them. Check the description below for all of their information. Let them know that Brian from Brian's Tech Therapy sent you. They will take amazing care of you. Now, in the Fire Dancer demo from Jen, the key thing is the shadow detail behind the dancers for an OLED in the earlier shot, but retaining the color. In comparison from the G5 to the G4, the brighter the flames got, the flames would look more white on the G4. On the G5, it's right there with the S95. That's incredible to see the new Tandem 4-stack layer OLED from LG displays catch up to Samsung displays QD-OLED in this regard. Do feel there's a bit more color on the S95F, but it's incredible seeing what the G5 is capable of. Now, this shot is very interesting. They look very different. The S95F, you can see the translucent nature of the drum, and it's missing on the G5. That was one of the only shots I saw where one thing was missing from the other. Very interesting. Which one is more realistic? I'll have to ask Jen, but I thought the S95F was definitely more impactful in that shot. Now, jumping back into Filmmaker, we were pushing the TVs earlier with some different presets. They both look amazing and they both look very natural. The flexibility of image on both these TVs is absurd. They are so bright, so vibrant. You can again leave them in their most accurate preset. Even if you're somebody who loves vibrant images, you can stay in their most accurate presets and be very happy. Now, I won't be covering gaming in this video. I'll do that on my own when I have an S95F review sample from Samsung and as well as my own G5. But the G5 and the S95F have both pushed the envelope now that they have 4K, 165 Hertz, both have 4 HDMI 2.1 ports. They're both incredible gaming displays. Now, what are your thoughts on these two monsters? The S95F comes in 55, 65, and 77 being QD-OLED. Then you have a RGB Tandem OLED at 83. Their 42 and 48 are just WOLEDs. The G5 has a 55, 65, 77, and 83. The 97 will not have the Tandem OLED technology, nor will the 42 and the 48. You have WebOS on the LG and you have Tizen on Samsung. You also have a gapless wall mount with the G5, which is incredible to lay flush against the wall. The G5 is more thick than the S95F, but doesn't have the thick bottom, meaning it's nearly the same thickness from top to bottom. And it also has a silver bezel, very small, versus the black bezel on the S95F. The reason I bring these things up, as these TVs are so unbelievably close in terms of image quality, these quality of life features are what's most important. While the LG G5 does have better reflection handling than most glossy technologies or TVs out there, the S95F's anti-glare is absolutely amazing at what it does well, meaning ambient light, as I mentioned before, lamps, overhead lights are virtually invisible. The G5, though it is better than a lot of other glossy screens, it can be a mirror at times in the wrong conditions. The anti-glare on the S95F is actually incredible at what it does. Its kryptonite is direct sunlight, and blacks can look lifted, as well as the contrast ratio altered if the room is too bright or if the sun hits it directly. Again, these quality of life features can be most important when the image quality is this close. In closing, I love them both. I think they're both absolutely amazing, and I would buy either one if I was in the market for a 55, 65, or 77. They both win, in my opinion. I'm Brian. This is Tech Therapy. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider liking and subscribing. Love you guys. Take care.
It's better to burn out than to fade away. I belong to nobody!